Leonardo, Donatello, Michelangelo, and Raphael. So that's where I got their names from. And I realize that I tell myself these dumb jokes before I dive deep. And when I find myself laughing, it's ha 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 ha. Oh shit, here I go. Whoosh, down into a deep, difficult place.
Right.
And the laughter is like a lure that hooks me and drags me down. So.
Anyone here? I think we have one in the middle.
Yeah,
I think there's somebody with a mic.
With the yellow beret.
And we'll take a couple, and then we'll come back and take some more at the end.
Yeah, hi. Hello, I love...
Oh, you have it written down. Oh,
I do. So when writing this play, did you find relevant or consider at all the consumption by adjacent minorities, both those who identify with white America and those who identify with brown America? Because I know I heard you guys talking about like your white audience members and your black ones, and then like the differentiations between those.
What's cool about I have thought of that, and what I build in the play is a system. It's tricky to talk about if you haven't seen it, but it's a system of relationships, right, between four people. And what happens is I do all the scenes are different combinations of folks. Every character gets a solo. Yes, sir, you've seen it. Every character gets a solo, and then after the break or the intermission or when the slavery conversation happens and the contract is agreed upon, in the second half of the play, you might notice that combinations of characters continue, but they're only men, only women, only white people, only black people. And so what that does mathematically is it creates a web so that everybody is included in the conversation energetically. That's what happens. But that's what I've noticed happens from our talkbacks, because we have Latinx folks in there, Asian American folks, Asian people come, people from all over are definitely invested and involved in the conversation because of the lines that I've drawn energetically and with the scenes. So it's you get the biggest bang with four characters. You combine them in different ways, and you sort of get everybody in the net in a good way.
I didn't notice that, I have to say.
You didn't notice after the break, you right? The men have a scene, the women have a scene. The men have a scene, then solo, then the white folks have a scene, then solo, then the black folks have a scene. So yeah, it's definitely it's cut up like that. Whereas in the first half of the play, it's interracial, you know, and then all four of them together like that. So yeah.
Can I follow up really fast?
Well, only if there's no one else that has a burning question about the play.
Burning.
You win the right to follow up.
I think that's really great. I think that it seems like that sort of, I think that's really great. It seems like that sort of solution would make it easier for people of different demographics to actually understand the plight of the two demographics that you're talking about. So I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And again, it's tricky because you see what appears to be, you know, these demographics, but actually it's talking about all of us because, you know, questions and things like equality and inequality and racism and fairness and justice and getting your piece of the pie and all those things, it's a question that involves all of us. You know what I'm saying? So that's, you know, it's not just a white-black thing, but that's just how I decided to draw this one out, you know. So
I got to move us to Native Son.
Native Son.
Because I have to say, so Native Son is a novel by Richard Wright that you have now.
Is he a relative of yours? Right.
I'm sorry to say it. No, who's not a relative of mine, sadly. However, I do have a long relationship to the novel.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, like what?
It's just, I mean, it's such a, particularly as a black man, I mean, as a young black man, I read that book multiple times, right? And found myself in it in a bunch of different ways, and have continued to find myself in it in a bunch of different ways over the years, depending on how angry or vulnerable or how I'm feeling in relationship to the world.
Right.
And I guess the fairly obvious first question to ask you about this is just that, I mean, it's such an iconic text. People have tried to adapt it to film failingly in the past.
I think they did it twice. Well, they they made the film.
Well, they made the film, but
I mean, in the movie, hey, in the film business, our expectations are. It got greenlit, it got made.
is it a hard book to adapt? Is there something uniquely hard about it to adapt?
Right. Correct. It's a heavy story. It's a horrible story. It's practically a true story. It's the story of a brother who you don't want to be your brother, and yet he's your brother. You are your brother's keeper, yo. And Richard Wright, I think I read somewhere, he doesn't want us to cry for bigger. And yet I cried for bigger when I read the novel. I cried for bigger and myself. I cried for Mary Dalton. I cried for the Dalton family. I cried for Bigger's mom and his, so.
Can you, it feels silly to do, but can you give just a very quick recap of
the novel? I hope I don't get it wrong. If there any Richard Wright scholars in the audience, maybe you could, no. So, so it's set in the novel's 80 years old, and it's set in...
Do the math.
I don't know, but it's set a long time ago, way back in the war. And... it's a story of a young man whose name is Bigger Thomas, who wants to find his place in the world, you could say. Lives with his mother and his siblings in Chicago. They don't have a lot of money. Mother is hardworking. Father died when he was young. And one day his mom... he's angry. Right, that's another. He's angry. Can't find his way through this world.
Similar to Leo.
Yeah, similar to Leo. Although, similar. But and one day his mom, he hears of a job for him, a job driving as a chauffeur for a wealthy family named the Daltons. Wealthy white family. This family, so he goes to interview for the job. This family's a righteous family. I mean, they're nice folks. They live in a nice house. They seem lovely. Mrs. Dalton, Mrs. Dalton is visually impaired. She's blind. Mr. Dalton is gregarious and kind. They have one daughter whose name is Mary Dalton, who's outgoing and wants to do good in the world, and I don't want to mix up the story of the novel with the story of the film, because the story of the film is closer to my mind right now. But Bigger gets the job. He loves the job, and one night. I'm trying to think, because I can only think of the film now.
Well, the main point here is that he does, what's driving in the story is that there is, he murders Mary Dalton.
Well, he murders her
accidentally.
She is, I want to get this right, she is intoxicated, I think, in the book, and noisy, loud. He helps her up the stairs, the grand staircase in the house. She's making a lot of noise. He's so terrified that he's going to lose his job, which is kind of sort of the only nice thing that's kind of ever happened to him, kind of sort of. And so he is trying to get her to shut up and takes a pillow and puts it over her face. And as the mother, visually impaired, cannot see, comes to the door and is standing in the doorway, he's shut up. And when he removes the pillow, Mary has died. And then it gets even more intense, because he figures, well, I got to dispose of the body. They have a furnace downstairs. He puts her in the furnace. And onward from there,
And and the idea of both in Baldwin and in your, in Wright and in your take, is that he can disappear. That he is so unseen, and people have such a so many ideas about a black male and his body that they can map onto it, that perhaps he can walk through the world and no one will see him.
And
which
of course doesn't happen. Yeah.
One of the choices you've made that I'm particularly curious about, and so in the book, Bigger Thomas, and I have to say, I wonder if I just conjured this, or if this is how Richard Wright described him. He's a large man. He's stoic. He's and he is representative of a lot of things that white people fear, physically.
Right. Right.
And you have cast him as more Afro-punk.
Ashton Sanders, who's he's a kind of he's slender and kind of, when he leans on you, he kind of drapes himself on you, and he's always got the sly smile. Wonderful brother. But Rashid Johnson, who's the director of the film, and also a really awesome visual artist, we really wanted to explore Bigger's fragility, his strength, his determination, but also get to those things that we don't ordinarily allow in our minds certain people to feel, i.e. black women are supposed to be strong. And we're seen often as angry, even when we're not, even when we're just talking with our hands excitedly. But we're not supposed to be fragile. Neither are, black men, not fragile. You're scary if you're big, or if you're large, or even if you're not. You're dangerous. So we wanted to explore what we knew. Also, we wanted to explore the possibility of Bigger Thomas and Mary Dalton becoming friends. That was very important to me, to imagine. It's 2019, and what have we got in 2019? The possibility that we might become friendly.
But again, much like in White Noise, they become friends, and it is not a good thing.
Well, there's work to do. It's not just like friending someone on Facebook. Hello, we're friends now. Great. There's work. That means that's the beginning. Like Happily Ever After takes a lot of work. There is work to do. There's real work. There are conversations that need to be had. And again, not just between black and white, but between black, and sisters and brothers need to talk to each other. And we all need to start having substantive conversations about what we're really feeling. And thinking, and start unpacking some of that stuff. So Big and Mary don't. Mary gives Big, in the film, Mary gives Big a gift, a present, a record, a piece of vinyl that he loves. And he, at her boyfriend Jan's request, gives her some drugs. I think it's Molly he gives her, because they're friends, they're hanging out, they're sharing things. And she gets sort of overwhelmed by the drugs. And then, of course, again, he's scared for his job.
But she's also there's a friendship, but it doesn't feel equal. She's demanding access to his blackness as her employer.
How so? How is she demanding access to his black? Unpack that, please.
That's what it felt like to me. I mean, it was your movie.
But it's your phrase, so I don't know.
It felt like
what do you feel?
He wasn't eager to enter into the friendship. She kept, he was on his job, and she kept saying, "Come hang out. Let's go to the bar. Let's drop your guard, and show me this black world I don't have access to."
Right.
And he was and when he gave into it, it was his undoing.
No. I hear what you're saying, because perhaps he didn't know how to negotiate that friendship. Nor did she. So wanting access to his blackness, wanting access. Sure, he's someone, but is that that's not in itself a bad thing. I mean, we demand access to each other's your fashion sense. You know what I mean? I want to hang with you because look, you know where to shop. Obviously.
I'm going to take that as a compliment.
I'm serious. I'm like, look at you. You know what I'm saying? And so we are always looking at each other and saying, you're a scholar. You can, and that's not in itself a bad thing. But we skip over the necessary beats of development. And we don't really, there's a point where we might stop listening to each other and only think about what we want from the other. And that's where it gets problematic.
We don't have a lot of time, and I hate to rush on from that because I think that is a profound point. But your band, I promised you we would talk about your band.
I didn't. My band. I want this curtain, by the way, because when we rehearse at home.
In addition to writing plays and movies and all the rest of it, you told me backstage, I didn't know this, you were writing songs before you were writing plays.
I was writing, That's the first thing I started writing, songs before I was writing plays or novels or short stories or anything, or essays or films, TV shows, of course. But the songs came first, and it's still the smallest tree in my forest, but we give it a chance to grow. In between the plays and the TV shows, we gig out, so it's cool.
What is it? What brings you joy about it?
I love writing songs, and I love playing the guitar, and I got a good right hand, and I love guitars. I love gear. I love. It's weird, but yeah.
It's not weird. I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah, my husband's making me a new guitar for my birthday, so I'm all excited. We look at wood and we talk about the action and all this shit and what pickups I'm going to have on it. But it's and it's just, I think personality-wise, I think the world of literature was more welcoming to me than the world of music. The world of music I found to be at an early age very threatening, for real specific reasons. And the world of literature, I could sort of, being in a library surrounded by books was a safer space for me than being in a bar surrounded by people listening to music, other musicians. So I kind of spent more time in the library as a writer and less time.
And it's the being in the bar stuff
well,
that you mean about
to be a musician. Well, to be a musician, yeah, it's dicey. It's a little, it's kind of. So, but now I'm I got these steel-toed boots.
That's right.
I can do it. So it's called Suzan-Lori Parks and the Band, and it's easy name for the band, and it's like neo soul, black rock,
That's great.
It's fun.
And so, related to that, maybe you are now also about to be the showrunner for National Geographic's next season of Genius, which is going to be about Aretha Franklin. Who?
I know. So I spend, I'm still in the research phase of it, but I spend a lot of time watching clips of her singing, and I read.
Tough life.
I know, right? Tough. I know. I suffer so, and yet I have to go beyond the person that she presented most often to her audience.
What fascinates you about her? Or what fascinates? Is that right? What fascinates you
about
her so far?
She's got. I mean, she is her fragility and her strength. Just how she just continued, regardless. I mean, she had some serious hardships that she did not really share with the world necessarily. She might have shared through her voice and her presence and her fucking awesome musical chops, which were amazing. But she just continued on. She kept going when most people would have quit. And that's pretty great.
I continue. Amazing Grace, the double disc, is
one of
the greatest albums ever recorded.
Yeah.
I grew up in church. I don't go to church these days. My mother would be very upset with me, but I do go to Aretha on a regular basis, and it just fills me.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
I have only left 5 minutes for your questions, but I was selfish that way. But we do have these 5 minutes. So anything you want to ask, Suzan-Lori Parks, let's go. Who's got one? And I think we're gonna bring a mic around. Here we go with the hat.
With the cool hat, with the hat on the side.
Right. So just going back to the native son thing too, talking about the friendship in that, because even reading the book, there's a lot of power dynamics happening with that. So it's almost like can a friendship even happen in that with those power dynamics happening? I think that's something that we're I think even as a society kind of exploring right now in terms of who's kind of on top and who's on bottom. But my other question was just about, as a playwright, I guess, tackling screenwriting, and then how is that, and particularly adapting a work like that? How do you even start? What are the kind of the highs and lows and challenges of that?
Right. No, that's a great question, man. The highs are definitely that I get to work. I feel that I get to work hand in hand with a great writer who, in Richard Wright's case, I've worked, on Native Son, Their Eyes Were Watching God. We did for Oprah. When she had the Oprah Winfrey Presents. The Gershwin's Poor Game Best, I did on Broadway a few years back. I get to hold the hand of a great writer, and I get to walk with them. I really feel like the original writer got it right. They really did. Richard Wright did it correctly, right? Our job is to roll the wheel forward. So we're not schooling him on what he should have done. You know what I'm saying? We're not Monday morning quarterbacking his shit, okay? We are saying, wow, well done, brother. Let's bring it to now, to 2019, for example. So that's definitely the high. The other high is that they've done the majority of the work, so I don't have to really figure out the plot points. You know what I mean? I'm like, yay! It's like tracing, to tracing something. So that's kind of nice. Low, working on Native Son. Rashid Johnson's a great director. It was joy. The cast was wonderful. The producers were lovely and respectful and cool. There were no lows in that,
There's a lot of beautiful people in that movie, by the way. I mean, just to be on that set must have been
it was
lovely.
It was joyous. So there aren't any lows, but it's just a different kind of tactic between screenwriting and playwriting. Like the difference I tell my students at NYU, the difference between velvet and corduroy. And when you're writing a screenplay, maybe it's velvet. Black velvet. I heard you like black velvet. Black velvet and
teal. Also, I like teal.
Okay, a teal or teal and corduroy. So it's that kind of thing. It's just a different, same action. Just different vibe, different feeling. I mean, obviously theater. I feel like I'm right there in the room with them when I write a screenplay, a movie, a TV show. I turn on the movie in my head. I just watch it. I'm watching. So it's a kind of a different muscle. Yeah, but it's all enjoyable, yeah.
There was another hand over here, back there.
Hi. I have a question that's a bit odd, but in White Noise, you have a contract in the play, and I was wondering how you felt that changed the play formally, if at all, like having that conceit there.
Right. So what she's referring to is Leo, our brother in the play, says, Ralph, I want to be your slave for 40 days. And he's very specific. And he wants them to have a sort of a game plan or a sort of an agreed upon set of circumstances, which is a modern take on the immoral, fucked up system. Sorry, I'm trying to see what So it's a modern take on it. He's very clear about the 40 days, and he says we should be allowed to do certain things and shouldn't be allowed to do other things. And then, of course, in the next scene, they go about changing everything up and agreeing to change everything up. So it's just more of a modern take on it. That's all.
And that we're locked in. We agreed to lock ourselves into
this.
Yeah.
And it also just vibes with the idea of the social contract, and the contract that Dawn is talking about. Dawn has a contract with her parents, not a written contract, but just an understanding, the understandings that we have with people. So we have in the play an actual physical, many-paged document that they agree upon, they review and agree upon. And then in the first scene of Act 2, they change it up. They type out Ralph writes up some amendments, and they put the amendments on the wall. And that becomes the next thing that they agree upon.
And I noted they tack it on the wall. It stays on the wall throughout the act, and it's like it's I believe also a red piece of paper to go with the red chairs.
Yeah.
House on fire.
Yeah, that's right.
There was one over here.
Sure. Hi.
1 second, because we're live streaming, so we want you
There you go.
microphoned.
So it was so interesting early on when you were talking about anger and society, and you organized that thinking. And I wondered if you wanted to mention or offer, did you have a metamorphosis? Did you have kind of some maybe crucible in your life where you had anger and you then just worked through it?
Yeah, that's great. Did I have some anger at one point in my life, and have I worked through it? It's like that song, How I Got Over, Clara Ward. And the,
How
anyway,
I got over.
How I got over. Every day. I sing that song every day.
Was there a crucible?
Was there a crucible?
kind of
Every day, every day, every day there's a crucible. Every day it's like, you have to. I mean, it's not a hit it and quit it. You know what I mean? It's a daily. That's what it is. I bring it on. That's what it means for me to be alive. Here we are. We're grappling with things every single day, and for me, it's about working through it with maximum kindness and generosity so that I can continue to be of service. That's my goal. And when I do that, when I can manage that, instead of like go wah on somebody and when I really can manage that, I feel, yes. Now I am growing. I'm being the person who my forefathers and foremothers dreamed about. That's my job. And whoever we are, right? We have people back there who dreamt of something great, and this is who we are. We're here right now able to realize that. If only we would commit to doing the work. So, thank you.
Folks, Suzan-Lori Parks, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Kai.
And I think we got some more music coming now, I believe. I don't have my headset, so I can't say.
Some
I
cool
think you
music,
just get
yeah.
out.
Okay.